Meeting of the Teachers and State Employees Retirement System and Local Government Employee Retirement Systems Board of Trustee meeting. We're starting a minute late. We had many of our members who were on a tour of our updated call center, so thank the staff for putting that together and those of you who joined that to see what we're doing. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Members, we have an Ethics Act which attempts to identify any conflicts or potential conflicts of interest that are before us. Having seen the agenda, does anyone have a conflict or a potential conflict of interest? Thank you. Hearing none, we'll proceed. Without objection, we'll consider any motion or second to a motion for efficiency purposes to be considered a yes vote. We got lots to go over today, and then we have the State Health Plan Board meeting right after this. It'll be long also. Let me give them this one. This one is highlighted and I've replaced that. Sorry, Mitch McConnell. That was a joke. Okay, all right, the housekeeping, sorry. As we go through the procedures, I'd like to ask that we adjourn our meeting in honor of Mayor King, who just passed away. I've attended his service. I think he's the longest serving mayor in the state of North Carolina. So it's a great loss to the King community. Your Homer would have something to say about that. We have a public comment section. Does anyone, and you will sign up with Patty as far as the public comment section is concerned. Well, I don't know what we're doing here. Okay. As far as housekeeping, please take a moment to silence your computer and put it on mute. If we take a roll call, we've already discussed that, but if you have to depart the meeting, please let us know, and likewise let us know when you return. Finally, any text messages or any recorded communications between board members during the meeting, even on personal cell phones, would like to be considered public record. I'd like to introduce Mary Scruggs, who's the Special Deputy Attorney General, who is the board's legal advisor. Stand up and take a bow. And she's in accordance with the North Carolina General Statutes. We'll now ask that you stand and join us for our Pledge of Allegiance. Our salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And in memory of Secretary of State Lane Marshall's husband, who passed away this week, she always leads us in our other board meetings with our salute to the North Carolina flag, and we'll do that in Mr. Bunn's honor. I salute the flag of North Carolina and pledge to the old North State love, loyalty, and faith. Thank you. I've already gone over the Ethics Act, and now I'll do a roll call. Thank you.
All right, so TSERS board members, if you're having any difficulty with audio controls, you've downloaded the app. Those are attending virtually. The audio controls are on the right-hand side, and you've got your microphone and your headset. That's where the controls are. And I'll start with the TSERS board. Dale Falwell.
Here.
Barbara Gibson. Here. And we have Teresa Everett is the delegate for Catherine Truitt.
Correct. Good morning.
Is that Teresa? Good morning.
Yes, it is. Good morning.
Thank you. Dirk German. Here. Jeffrey Winstead. Jeffrey Winstead. So I don't hear Mr. Winstead. John Ebbinghausen. Here. Joshua Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Lance Brewer.
Here, good morning.
Good morning. Margaret Reeder. Margaret Reeder wasn't going to be able to attend. Oliver Holly.
Here.
Pat Hurley. Here. Vernon Gammon. Vernon said he wasn't going to attend. And let me go back to Jeffrey Winstead.
Here.
Oh, thank you. And now to the Elgers Board. Treasurer Falwell.
Here.
Brenda Howerton. Brenda Howerton. I don't hear Brenda. Teresa Everett.
I'm here.
Thank you. Clea Atkinson.
Here.
Homer Dearman.
Here.
Jeffrey Morse. Don't believe Jeffrey's going to attend. Kevin Gordon.
Here.
Thank you. Lance Brewer.
Here.
Melody Brady.
Here.
Thank you. Nancy Vaughn. Don't believe Nancy's going to attend. Pat Hurley. Here. Tony Brown. Tony's not able to attend. And Vernon Gammon, not able to attend. All right, we have a quorum.
We stuck our tongue at the finish line, so we appreciate all the participants and all the designees who are here with us. This is obviously a vacation month for a lot of folks, and then we have some members who are under the weather, can't attend there. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the TSERS board meeting of April 27th.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. German. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Treasurer Falwell.
Aye.
Barbara Gibson. Aye. Teresa Everett.
Aye.
Teresa. Oh, thank you. Jeffrey Winstead. Jeffrey Winstead.
Aye.
Thank you. John Ebbinghausen. Aye. Joshua Smith.
Aye.
Thank you. Lance Brewer.
Aye.
Thank you. And Pat Hurley. Aye.
Thank you. Now we have and the local system. Do I hear a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Dale Falwell.
Aye.
Teresa Everett.
Aye.
Let's see. Kevin Gordon. Don't hear Kevin. Lance Brewer.
Aye.
Melody Brady.
Aye.
Pat Hurley. Aye. All right.
Thank you. Okay, members, before we go into our operations update, I just want to make a brief comment about some press reports that you've seen regarding our retirement system. And I'd like to start out by saying what many in this room already know: it doesn't matter how thin you slice this piece of paper, there's always two sides to the story. And unfortunately, when you give people the information they're entitled to, they don't choose to report both sides of the story. We don't pick and choose which laws to apply or who to apply them to. And we treat everybody equally and fairly. We do not write the laws. We are responsible for implementing the laws that the General Assembly passes. And if we don't like what the law says, then we try to work to correct that. Secondly, we don't control LexisNexis or any error that may have occurred when something the General Assembly passes gets cross-worded with something that ends up on a website somewhere. We're not responsible for that. And lastly, in so many instances, we have at least one hand arm tied behind our back in terms of what we can say regarding the confidentiality of any of our members or their beneficiaries. What I will close with in this regard is by saying this. When you have 1 million people on this plan and we're paying out $7 billion a year in gross benefits, things happen, errors happen. Even when the error is by the member themselves, we're hardly able to even talk about that because sometimes those errors when not discovered in some cases for decades because of the old mainframe system we used to use versus what we're now using now, that sort of compounds itself. So we're not responsible for any errors that members may have made. We're not responsible. We don't pick and choose which laws the General Assembly applies. We're not responsible for anything that was improperly transformed as it got from general statutes to LexisNexis, if that's even the right terminology. What we are responsible for is that when we find an error, even errors that occurred 2 treasurers ago, we have a responsibility when we underpay someone, we pay them out immediately. We discover that we've underpaid anyone, we pay them immediately. When we have overpaid someone, we apply the law, and on top of that, we try to be as compassionate as we possibly can as it relates to implement the law the General Assembly passes. Lastly, I'll say this is further complicated by the fact that some of these news reports where it was disability plan, the DIPNIC plan was discussed. It's important to know that when you're on that plan, that there is an agreement that the member signs on to that says that when things happen at the Social Security Administration, you are responsible for any financial impact that whatever it is that you get from the Social Security Administration as it relates to the disability benefits that we offer. And the reason I'm going into such detail about that, the Social Security Administration is not as efficient as we are. And sometimes it takes weeks, months, years for things to actually catch up in the Social Security system. And when that happens, we've been paying them all along, but then they get this huge lump sum from the Social Security system that they're supposed to reimburse us for. Is that correct? And people forget that they agreed to that. So I just want to close by telling you that I should, and I do take it personally, when they've been given the information about what happened, they choose to belittle, attack the state employees who work in this building, work tirelessly to figure out what's right, get it right, and keep it right. So I just wanted to say that to you, and I can talk to any of you about that later if you like. But it doesn't matter how thin you slice a piece of paper, it still has 2 sides to it. All right, we'll now go into our operations update. I'll say one final thing. In some instances on this last topic, there are people who have comments or concerns that are not even in the system. They're not even a unit in the system. But even discussing things like that becomes difficult. So, thank you. Frank, how are you? Morning.
Before I get started on the update, I just want to expound a little bit on what the treasurer said. We have a lot of volume. We have very few people to turn the cases, but we remain focused on quality. When I meet with the managers, when I meet with our teams, I ask them to treat every individual case as if it were a family. Take it very personally. When we make a mistake, we try to catch things as quickly as we can. We care about what we passionately care about. I don't want anyone working with me or for me who doesn't care as much about it as I do. It's very important. So for what you don't see on the slide is last year we had about 3,900 retirements in July. This year we're a little lower than that, slightly over 3,700, about 3,750. Still higher volume over the last 2 years than we've seen previously. But even with some staffing shortages, we've worked overtime and we've been able to process things. If you get us your application for retirement 60 days out of your retirement, we're virtually 100% turnaround time on you. We're going to get you retired on time. What you'll see on this slide is a result of delays in information we need from employers or from individuals when we request things. And that does impact, but still, for the average of the year from last June through this June 2023, we're at 31 days turnaround time, and that was the average throughout the year, and our goal is at 30 days. Still doing really well there. For our benefits processing, survivor benefits, death processing, we upped staff. I talked to you about that last time. We upped some staff. We added some QCs. We added some analysts. We've recently added a supervisor because we did add that staff. We want people trained. We want them to have personal engagement with their supervisor. We need everybody to be working, doing things the same way, making sure everybody is in tune. And that's been very helpful. You can see by the slide that our turnaround times have significantly improved there. We have targeted turnaround times because we know how essential it is to get these payments out to survivors, because we know that some of these payments need to be used for burial expenses, and we want to try to make this happen as quickly as we can. So we're trending in an exceptional direction here. Volume is still pretty high. We still have a lot of death reports coming in, but it has subsided somewhat over the last 3 months. We're hopeful that will continue, and that's helpful in what we're doing for some other sections. In the disability section, we've got some cross-training going on. You can see that despite some challenges in our staffing there, it's a really small group too. So roughly 25% of staff throughout the year has been vacant. Our turnaround times are still below what our target is, and we're doing really well in that area. The quality is good too. We're high 90% percentile on quality of the caseload. The big thing here, we're getting a lot of refund requests. Because we are in control of our survivor benefit payments, what we've done is we've started cross-training our survivor benefits QCs and analysts in refunds processing, because we want to be able to get those monies back to people. When someone cashes out of the system, basically they're asking for their money back. We know it's for a reason. They need that money. They need that money as quickly as possible. And so we recognize that we have a high volume, so we're really targeting getting that turnaround time down in that. The QC bottleneck is where we have our biggest issue right now. So I've dedicated one of our staff members from survivor benefits to work 70%. She's training right now to work 70% on refunds requests. So that will trend down very quickly. So we're in a good spot there, and we know how to handle it. Still working on some staffing issues, but we still are in command of our turnaround times and our quality, and it's going now.
Rick, could you take a moment on the refund request? We have, as previous treasurers have done, we've initiated a letter to people who are not in this, have not had activity in the system for a long period of time, to see if they'd like to request a refund out of the system, correct?
That's correct. What we've targeted, though, with those letters is people that have less than 5 years of service. We also make sure that they understand when you withdraw, you take everything away. Your tenure is gone. If you take the money away, you're starting over if you come back to us. We do that in multiple mechanisms through email, through the forms themselves that you use to apply. We've added that information and made it very clear so that you can see it and you understand the ramifications of cashing out. But there are a lot of people who've just been stagnant. We haven't heard from them in years that have less than 3 years of service. They don't seem to intend to want to come back. So we're really targeting that group. We've got robo emails and robo call efforts ongoing, and we're really trying to target them. We'll expand on that as we get past this 3-year group. The thing we do have to consider with all of that is my partner here in member services. Every email I send, every letter I generate has the potential to create a phone call. They take phone calls for everything. So I have to be careful of the volume of things I'm doing in any given week or month as we target this group too. So we have to balance that, see what kind of response we're getting, and make sure that we're able to command the incoming call flux, because it can get really heavy really quick. So we are mindful of that in all this outreach.
So we're sort of cleaning the roles like the volunteer firefighter plan did, like the National Guard did, just making sure that, the people who are participants in the plan get rid of duplicates and all that kind of thing. So thank you very much for
Payroll processing, you can see we continue to climb with the monies we're paying. We had nearly 360,000 people for the month of June, and that amounts nearly $602 million paid. We do that with an incredibly small staff. We have 4 people and up from 2 some positions because we need cross training. People get sick. People like to take vacations. My payroll staff works holidays because they have to. And I want to be able to at least balance where some people can have off, and we can still get the work done for everyone. And if emergencies happen, there are enough to process all of this. It's scary when I have to process anything. Since that's almost the last person. Tom could probably get in there with instructions we've written, but I don't think Tom wants to do that. So we've tried to concentrate on a cross training effort to make sure that everybody knows how to process payroll. And there's other payroll functions with overpayment collections and things we've taken on over the last 14 months that we've added. So a lot's going on in payroll. The small group that does a wonderful job.
Let me add to this graph that this graph demonstrates what I've said in the past to this board. There are less people paying into this plan than are not. Secondly, this graph demonstrates that we've now crossed the $7 billion mark for annual gross benefit payments. 7 billion. So I just wanted to say that the math is catching up with what I've been telling this board for.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Last, this is a little bit of the self-service. You see hits on each of the offerings we have in self-service and people viewing their annual benefit statements, retirement estimates. That's over a 12-month period. What I did want to talk about with self-service in general is we've started our effort for online beneficiaries, for retirees in self-service. We're working toward that. We also have disability recipients that are required to submit a statement of income annually, and we're gathering business requirements to offer that for them so they can upload that information instead of mailing it in. Easier for them to handle, and it's just the smart way to go with things for them. It's much more efficient for us and them. Anything we can do online to help people not have to submit a form, wonder if it got to us in the mail, spend the money on the stamp, all of that. We're really trying to think about and trying to get things going on. There's a couple of other things we're in discussion about, and that should be upcoming. In our refunds online effort, we added an authentication piece that I've talked to you guys about before for identity. It offers questions that are both public information and private information, personal information for individuals. And you got to get all those questions right, or you're going to be talking to Tanya's group. Because we want to make sure who's applying is the real person. We're trying to protect people's money, trying to protect people's identity. And so we're in discussions about expanding that in self-service as well.
They asked me on this questionnaire if I ever owned this type of motorcycle, for example. That's how sophisticated this is getting. So they'll say, have you owned a Honda Goldwing? Or, which is yes. Have you ever owned a Triumph? Which is no. So they're taking all kinds of public record, probably like DMV and other kinds of things, and coming up with questions that are to verify that I am who I am.
We have questions that there's no right answer to incorporated in that as well, so you really have to know what you did. It's gotta be you.
I was gonna say, you probably don't want to give your security answers out.
That's all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
While you're the leader.
All right, thank you.
Did have one question. Do you have a link with, I noticed you say you had 25% vacancies. Do you have a direct link,
That's not in the entire,
just in sections?
just in sections,
Gotcha.
yeah. Smaller sections,
Gotcha.
you miss 2 people.
But do you have a direct link for those job postings or listings?
Well, yeah, we run those through the OSHR. Disability is particularly difficult to fill, and it's a very complex program. And so we have a niche amount of people that want those jobs. A lot of times we get county employees that are interested. And because of that, we try to be really selective because it takes about a year to get just a handle on it. It takes years to develop a full subject matter expertise. And I've got one person that's been there 24 years. She's still evolving. I mean, it's an ever-learning process. The statutes are very complicated, and we involve Tim frequently in those conversations. But we do try to be selective, particularly in hiring.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question before you switch gears? Back to what you were talking about with what was in the news with the overpayments and that. Has that spurred any kind of process changes in anything? Is it just like you were saying, there's errors, people do things that they're not supposed to, or is there some kind of process change that
We're always evolving with process changes. I've made a number of process changes in our, that was not a catalyst to it because my job is to constantly look at processes, work with our management and our analysts and QCs who do the work, because they're the ones that are going to find the things that can refine what we do. We've made a number, and that debt processing number that's gone down with turnaround time is a direct result of form changes for clarifications, processes that we've enhanced and eliminated that were unnecessary and redundant. We're asking people to give us the same thing twice, unnecessary. So with what we're doing, we're evolving. I can't speak to the timeline for when that particular.
Well, Rick, for example, one of the stories is about something that's several years old. And at the time, we made several process changes, but that was now years ago, so that we've implemented, we've not had issues, the same issues that we've had. So and then some of the others is, like the treasurer explained, the way the disability income plan works. So that's how it works. And that's the laws that we have to go by.
One of the things we do too, Barbara, just so you know, if we find things that we recognize could be issues for multiple people, we do have a series of reports that we have. We work with clients on that. We add those reports, we start working those. Depends on how often they're going to potentially occur, weekly, monthly. We have people assigned to review those reports. So if there is an error, we do a much better job identifying it much more quickly to at least reduce significantly the payment on under.
Well, I think one of the issues that I picked up on was the at least what they showed on TV, as far as the letter that they got was pretty clear, just you owe this amount of money. It was a significant amount of money for anybody to owe back. And I'm just wondering, like, how, whether it was right or wrong, the statute creates it or not, because that happens for state employees as well. Is there anything you can say about that just created a change from that? Are there any laws that maybe don't like that you would want to change based on that. It just seemed like whether, and I agree with you, there are two sides to every story. And I know you can't say everything. And I speak from also having payroll and also having to deal with those situations. How do you mitigate that? Because it is an issue.
It's really hard depending on the information you see. They're frequently one of the issues that we see. And by frequent, I don't mean 1 in 10 or 1 in 100.
Good.
But something we see is people submitting misinformation. And I don't know that all of that is with intent. There are older people who have been told they were born on a certain date and they weren't, and they give us information and it's off by a year. I mean, we try to balance and request additional information on all the things we do, but when we have something in front of us, we use it if it's a legal document. So that's a challenging thing as it relates to some of the estimates and payments we make out for retirements.
Well, and the disability income plan, Treasurer mentioned this too. I mean, we outline all how it works and how it works with Social Security. You have to sign it, initial it, check boxes that say you understand that this happens, and they get an actual have to report their income on the statement income forms. Disability recipients have to turn in this income form every year, and it says this as well. So we tried to put it everywhere and hey, sign here, you acknowledge that you understand that this is what's going to happen. And so, and again, this is stuff that's been added years ago, and not everybody remembers that they get Social Security approved 3 years later. And now we're saying, well, you got approved for Social Security, your benefits need to be offset. Well, I've spent that $60,000 or that $100,000, they've spent it on maybe medical bills or something else. And so now it's this big hardship, and they complain and they want us to do something, and we do everything we can in collecting it back we don't want to take their entire check. These payments coming back to us might take years and years to collect, or may go into even actually when they retire, or we're still collecting into the retire. So we've put a lot of communications out on it, and yeah, the letter is all you saw, but there's other things going on.
Were there other documents that maybe explained how
there's lots of
she
other
got into that
documents, yes.
situation, and then like giving options for paying it back?
When we, as these things evolve, they often end up with compliance and legal, and there are a number of meetings. The facts of the case are reviewed.
Pick up a little bit.
Everything's taken into consideration, and a final agency decision is written. In that final agency decision, it's as detailed as you could possibly get. And it's in a manner that I believe is understandable. It's not so litigated that you don't know what you're reading. It's detailed in the order of things that occur, with a full explanation of how we got there.
But there was I may be wrong in the dates, but there was a statute change in 2006 where the benefits will cease if you're not approved for Social Security. So everyone is now, most are prompted now, go to Social Security, get approved. So everything doesn't end up in a final agency decision.
Right.
But you have a lot of people who are going to Social Security now coming back to us, have several thousand on long-term disability, and they're all going to Social Security. And those that get the awards are getting, they're getting letters because this is the way the plan is designed. And so it's a frequent, it's just the way disability works. It's a frequent occurrence. And yes, since there's so many people that go through the process, and it's a normal part of the operations to handle the Social Security offsets when they get approved, or if they don't get approved, their benefits cease, and then health coverage ceases and that sort of thing, and we have to work with them on that.
One last question. Is there any standard that you have for how people pay back, so that they know that it's going to be a certain percentage or a certain amount of time? Or is that something that's variable? How do you determine that?
On the disability, it's a standard,
and everybody gets,
Disability
yes.
standard. What about any of the other ones?
On the pension, when we underpay someone, we pay them out immediately, all of it. When we pay someone, contrary to what the reporter reported, we've been working on cleaning up this language in the statute for over a year, General Assembly. It's just now gotten to the point where it is cleaned up.
But it's a range, my understanding, with the law that was passed of how to pay that back. So is there a standard within that range?
Good morning, everybody.
Sorry. You brought it up and you were talking to it, so I was just trying to figure that out. Sorry.
This is Patrick Dimlaw. I'm the Director of Policy Planning and Compliance. I was planning to discuss this a little bit later, but I'll go ahead and mention it.
That's fine.
There is a law that became law 2 days ago that our agency requested that will allow the board to determine or write rules, help staff determine when an overpayment has been entirely caused by administrative error. And in that situation, the way this legislation played out is that it sets it says that staff for the retirement systems should do several things to try to recover the overpayment. Right now, there has already been a law, state law, saying that, like other state agencies, we have an obligation to pursue recovery in full. So this is a fuller description of what that means for the retirement system. And what it says is that when it comes to recovering monthly ongoing payments in a situation where the overpayment was entirely due to administrative error, that the ongoing monthly payment should be reduced by between 8.5% and 25% of the net pension benefit. We would be in that situation where it's entirely due to administrative error. We would be as flexible as possible. We would start with the 8.5%, but the truth is that you have some people who want to pay more, and you get it over with. Get back to getting their full retirement check as soon as possible. So we work with people on those processes. Thing to watch for is that we'll have to develop an administrative rule that will help define when an overpayment is entirely due to administrative error. We'll be working with the boards on that so we can all agree on when those provisions come into play.
So for administrative error, it's 8.5% unless they want to pay more.
If the overpayment is determined to be entirely due to administrative error, as the treasurer was mentioning, we want to be as compassionate with people as possible. Up until now, we've been dealing with a state law that told us we had to pursue recovery by all legal means available, including filing a civil suit against the person.
Which we've never done.
Never.
So any talk of bankruptcy, civil suits, judgments associated with this office is inaccurate.
So we welcome this clarification that allows us to negotiate more flexibly with people because we do want to treat these situations as compassionately as possible.
John? Excuse me, Director.
Understand and fully support if it's our fault, fully administrative error and whatnot. But it's not. When they messed up their birth date by a year or they didn't pay something back, we still revert back to whatever means possible, full collection as quick as possible.
So, Mr. Eppinghausen, I would say that I agree with what you said until the very last part. It's not our position that we have to recover everything as quickly as possible. That would mean that we're recovering 100% and never allowing people to have any of their monthly payment at all until we recover it. And but we would be, if it's not entirely due to administrative error, we'd be under the status quo situation, which is that we have an obligation to pursue recovery in full. We work with people as much as possible on a reasonable way to allow for recovery of the overpayment.
Situations are different. For example, the disability discussion we had earlier, someone who's getting a $1,500 benefit from us that now needs to be offset by $1,490 and only getting $10 a month, that person is going to get $10 a month for 20 years until they retire. And so that $10 a month is going towards, most likely going towards what they owe. And we're only going to get $10 a month out of the 60,000 that they owe. And so, so each situation is kind of a little different, a little nuances to it, depending on the different circumstances. So we try to do our best to work with individuals to lessen the impact. It used to be when I first started, and when I first started, it used to be exactly what we did is we would collect the entire benefit, regardless of what it was, until it was satisfied. And then someone would have to argue how to get out of that and spread those payments out. And we might spread it over 3 months, over a few more months. But we used to be a lot more harsh in collecting, which that's decades ago.
And I remember 3 years ago, we had this discussion over trying to change the Social Security leveling and do away with that, and made a recommendation to do away with that. And the treasurer was very adamant about that individual. We weren't going all out collecting everything. We were being very generous in what we're collecting back. And so recommend changes and whatnot. All in all, though, what can we do? Because you've done great things in pushing for protecting the individual if it's a gross error on our part versus error on their part. How do we put that into media text and get stories out to say, hey, this is the good things that are going on, and if you do make errors, this is what the law says. How do we show the good story is what I'm trying to say, or ask.
I would just offer that as much as we have tried to use words in the English language to explain what has happened, and at the same time protecting the confidentiality of our members, there is no interest in getting the passionate story out. And I remember distinctly when these decisions were brought to me a few years ago about the overpayments. And I was told by legal, this is the way it's been done. We collect 100% of it until we get our money back. And the recommendation was made to me, and I agree with that, not to do that. And we didn't, and we haven't. We are never going to get our money back in these situations. Some of them are $250,000. Some of them are tens of thousands of dollars. We're collecting $10 a month for a person who's 78 years old. We're never going to get the money back. But that doesn't give us an excuse to not obey the law and the intent of the General Assembly. A lot of these cases actually go through OAH, who've actually confirmed that we've done the right thing. The other thing is that it doesn't matter, going back to the director's comment, it doesn't matter what process we put in place. If somebody gives us the wrong birth date, and then that payout is happening over a long few-year period of time, once that is discovered, it's just math. It's hard to really recover from that. We can't develop a process to determine if people give us the right birthday or not, especially on Social Security leveling. It really is a kick in the pants when all that kicks in. So we're doing all that we can to figure out what's right, get it right, and keep it right. And I think that with the help of the General Assembly this year, we've kind of gotten some of the squishiness out of this law to make it more standard going forward.
Yeah. Have there been any conversations with, as far as a plan to moving forward with protecting the retirees when they are in a situation like, give you a simple example, like if when I retired, if someone sat me down and said, hey, look, if you pay $2 a month, then it happens, and not to say it's going to happen to you, but it does happen. There's a chance that, down the road, there might be an overpayment where you would have to pay that back. But if you're part of this plan, then that plan would protect you for something like that down the road.
So, Mr. German, just to clarify, do you mean like offering new retirees to enroll in some type of insurance for this type
Right,
of?
yeah, something like that, that would protect them for a situation like this.
I'm not aware of any discussions about that.
Tim wants to comment.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just the statute that requires state departments, agencies, and institutions to pursue repayment of these overpayments is 143-6480B. And in particular, it says no department, agency, or institution may forgive repayment of an overpayment. So we see that as we're not allowed to forgive any portion of the overpayment. We have to continue to pursue repayment. We've got some flexibility about how we go about pursuing that repayment. But if we set up a situation like your hypothetical, it would seem to me like we wouldn't be pursuing the repayment unless there was something that was actually paying for that overpayment in its entirety.
But you would have the option to be part of that program, right?
That could be something that we could discuss further or look into, but that may be something for a third party to issue. We'd still have to follow the law.
For retirees too, we do, at about the 6-month mark of retirement, we do what's called a recalculation. A lot of times we're a product of what employers report for earnings and what they've reported in general, and they can make mistakes. So we give them time to get in, ag wages, corrections, things like that. That's usually when we discover if there's an underpayment, and that's it's still 6 months, but it's much sooner, and we have that process in place so we can discover it more quickly. Usually within that time, they figured out whether or not they're right information, they get it corrected, and they provide it to us, and we do the recalc, and then subsequent additional monies would be paid or you receive an overpayment invoice at that time.
And I would, before we go to Tanya, just say that, and we're stuck with words on paper. Homer and I joined the highway patrol at the same time. We're not married. We don't have children. We're filling out that paperwork, and the sheriff knows this. And Homer says, well, I don't know who to put down. So I put Homer's name down. Homer puts my name down. It's tragic situations.
It is happening.
We both get married. We both have children. There's a kill in line of duty death, and we are stuck with the words on paper. Clea, I think it's tragic.
Yes, I ran into that with the death of one of my deputies.
Yes.
And I ended up having to run interference with that, and that can become a nightmare. So that does happen, and it happened to me.
But this staff is stuck with the words on paper. So, yeah. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, are people asking when they hire or when they get ready for retirement for a certified copy of their birth certificate? Would that not help some there? On the birthday, years, I don't know.
Well, with employer reporting, they report that date to us. We ask for identification of when you're going to retire, but we don't ask for a certified copy of the birthday. But the entire process is based on what your employer is reporting. And sometimes people do provide that information, and we go by what's on that paper.
Does OSHR require birth certificate?
No, but we haven't had to collect payment based on that.
No.
So.
But it is something.
But the date of birth that OSHR has in the system is probably one that we use.
But it doesn't,
Yes.
yeah, it just doesn't impact a payment. I guess the only thing that I would say, and I didn't mean to open a can of worms, but just I think the standardization, the processes that you use for people to know this is how it happened. And I would love to see what your processes are for that, to see how you choose between the 8.5% and the 25%, or get a template letter of how that is, and maybe next meeting, maybe do a little thing like that or something.
It used to be 100%.
Well, that's a great improvement. I would agree. Great improvement. But I do also and I'm sensitive to it because after 30 years of being an HR director in state government, I've seen a lot of overpayments and how to do that. And people, even with the little amount of money that I'm talking about, you got bigger amount of money, people get very upset. I will admit I fell for the WRAL thing, but whether they showed the older gentleman that was like in his late 70s or whatever and kind of sick, and he went back to work at Walmart or the grocery store or whatever he did to.
That had nothing to do with us.
Well, I'm just saying, I just think if we take the tack that we don't want anybody in that situation and that we're standardizing our processes, that people know what they're in for. And I believe that that it's all written on paper. But another thing that I find in HR, they say you have to tell people 3 times. I'd be happy to send out information to state employees. You've got lots of ways to send out information just to kind of help that, especially now, perfect opportunity if you've gotten the law changed and improved it to your point of making it a positive media thing. Media won't do it. We can.
Sure. And to Clee's point, we're partnering with the Sheriff's Association and the Police Chief Association and the other FOP, PBA on this beneficiary stuff. And we didn't really want to light that candle until we made sure that our online, everybody comes into this system and tries to adjust their beneficiary at once, we're going to be more backlogs. So we want to make sure that we had the ability electronically for people to check these beneficiaries, to make sure that Homer changed his and I changed mine as we got married and had children, and to make sure all that can be done as efficiently as possible.
Well, I'm just talking about communicating all that, just making sure that we're transparent, we're saying what our standardized processes are, and communicating the venues that we have. I know we
Sure.
can't control the media.
So, all right, let's proceed.
Morning. Sorry, that's okay. I'm gonna give you some highlights of member services. I'm Tanya Bass. I'm the Director of Member Services that composes of the Education Retirement Group and the call center. I will start with our Education Retirement Group slides and then transition over to the call center slides if there's no questions for Education. So we're going to start with our correspondence slides. For the last 3 months, from April to June, we've responded to over 24,000 pieces of correspondence. And our average turnaround time has been 11 days. And from the graph, you can see the last quarter we had a slight less correspondence come in, and our turnaround times were in better state. So I want to explain why that looks that way. We implemented our emails to filter through our NICE platform, which is a good thing. But what happened was we had to reallocate resources from that was working on mail coming in, which is our correspondence, to help transition us through the NICE system with the emails that caused a backlog of emails that was coming in through our NC retirement box. We wanted to clean those emails out there first so we could continue with our first in, first out, so that then we could transition to emails that was in NICE, which has started accumulating some backlog that's there. So we stayed in that place for about 2 months, and we was able to get the backlog out. And so about April and May, we had a little backlog and we had to reallocate some of the resources. But I'm happy to report by June, we were back at our 6-day turnaround time. So we just moved some resources around within the same group to move the work to keep the responses to the members still moving fast. In our meetings and education with our webinars, from fiscal year to date, we conducted about 186 webinars and employer trainings with about 11,000 attendees. At this point, we have trained all of our counselors in our education retirement group to be able to present in meetings with our Empower group, with communications to do informational videos to get information out to retirees and people transitioning to retirement so they can have a better understanding of what the next steps are. So we've done that, and it's worked very well with our communications group. So we've been able to do that. Visitors and counseling sessions. From April to June this year, we have conducted over 105 appointments, and we have had over 686 visitors to come meet us at the front desk where they may dropped off forms, had forms notarized, or asked a quick question. Someone that's sitting at the front desk is a trained counselor, so they are able to assist if need be on a form or educate them on their next steps or get a form notarized so they don't have to be turned away. They don't have to call back since they're already here. We can service them while we're right here.
And while they're there, if no one's in front of them, what are they doing? While they're sitting out there, if no one is in the lobby, what are they doing?
They're doing emails.
Right.
They're working, so yes. They are trained. They still do work if no one's in the lobby. They do emails. If emails are okay, at a good point, we will have them do some other type of work, like a workload item that comes over and help in Rick's operations. We have noticed a decline in appointments. Over the last year, they have continued to decrease. We would like to think that it's been because we have been gradually adding new staff in the call center, getting our people in the call center, as well as the technology that we've added in Orbit Self-Service. They're utilizing the Orbit Self-Service more. We've added chat so they can real live, responses. And with us having more staff in ERG, which is the Education Retirement Group, and the call center, they're getting a turnaround time in regards to the responses to their email and correspondence. So they're not needing to feel like they need to come in and have an actual appointment. Christy, which is our communications person, she does a good job with getting a lot of information out there, and those informational videos is giving them step by steps, so they may not need to come in to speak with us in person. So that's worked out for us. We've received over. We can move to the email slide. We received over 20,000 emails from April to June, which is about a 14% decrease from last quarter of 24,000. Again, as I stated, I do believe that we've reduced the duplication of contact. As far as there was at a point in time where people were calling the call center, they was emailing at the same time, and they were sending a letter, or they were sending an email up to the treasurer, all at the same time. And because we have added additional staff in the call center, and we have updated our communications in regards to updated videos, we have pushed some things to Orbit Self-Service, working with Rick. Rick has done some changes in his group, which has decreased people from calling us because they're getting things out faster to them. So all of it, as Rick stated in his presentation, works hand to hand. The more he moves things and update his letters and reallocate his resources, it does play a part on our volume and member services. So I think it's all been a group effort, and that's what has caused the decrease. So that's what I have for the education outreach side before I start to the call center. Yes.
For this quarter, I might have missed it. How are we responding to more emails than we're receiving? Is that because of the backlog you talked about going to the new system?
So I can explain that a little bit. So all the emails do come to our NC Retirement email box, and then they are transitioned or forwarded over to our NICE platform. So we always have a copy of what's there. So the backlog that we have, because the email started, I believe, in March 2nd. I want to be exact with the date. And when they started filtering there, we had already had some emails that was sitting in the NC Retirement box. So before we did that, even though NICE started, we wanted to make sure we cleared those out. So we did have some of our call center staff assist us with cleaning out that backlog. So we was able to get those out. You wasn't getting as many in because of the other things that I mentioned before, less contact. We had a lot of duplication going on. Even with the emails, we would go through emails and we'll see that we had 3-4 emails from one person. So with the same question. So you're not going to respond to all 4 emails because you're going to answer that one email.
And NICE offers you the spam filter, correct?
Actually, NICE does not answer the offer. What was happening before NICE, we had a counselor or counselors actually looking at every email that came into the NC retirement box. They would filter out the spam. They would filter out uploads and send it to Rick's group to upload. They did all that manually, which was taking resources, and they had to do it all day long because emails came in on it. Because the backlog became in NICE because NICE wasn't doing that. So it took us longer to get through it until we got through the backlog. So that when it was real time. Also, before NICE, we would have to take those emails once they clean all those out and then start distributing to counselors, which delayed the work a little bit. With NICE, they just log into a queue, email drop. If it's a duplication, they can see that just by what was already sent. They know how to handle that and move it on. So it's just like a drop, just like a call. So we're moving the emails a whole lot quicker through the NICE system.
What are we using now that all the garbage, all the spam that comes in to public box, is that still manual human or is the system now?
It's still coming through the NICE box, but the counselors know what we'll go ahead and trash it. We still count as an email because we touched it. We had to do something with it, but they know what to filter out.
So how much of that, on average, how much of the emails coming in, I guess the purplish column, how much of that is spam versus actual questions of need?
I don't have that answer because we haven't tracked that.
But I think you told me previously you weren't so before March, let's say, you weren't counting any of the spam anyways.
No,
any of those emails.
In the
So it is a part of those bars, but it's back. They were touching it, but they weren't counting it. And so it is something to look at. Is how do we designate spam? Because doesn't the system handle some of the spam? I thought there was.
It does. We have
there is some handling of the spam
in the coding. If there's certain things, but it has to be so exact that it's sent it to deletion box.
They have done some automation of the spam, but you're right, because we've had this discussion of spam. Do we count the spam? We touch the spam. Maybe we need to change this a little bit to somehow account for the spam.
I was looking more on the piece of, do you have one person out of a staff of 5 who has to spend their day dealing with spam? And is there an automated system we can work with DIT to help reduce that workload on your staff?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And prior to NICE, that's exactly what was happening. Someone was doing that, but we wasn't reporting those numbers we wasn't reporting that work in our numbers. So last meeting, I had mentioned that we're going to see a spike because now it is included because no one is filtering that out manually. As Tom's,
you guys have been working with DIT and you have been working with NICE to do some of the filtering already, so they have done some work. It's it's perfecting it still.
Yes, we are.
And they're still working out some of the kinks just in the NICE system itself. So it's also brand new. There's a lot of things that the developers on the software side are still working through that her group meets weekly to identify, well, more than that sometimes, but sometimes it's 3 or 4 times a week to work through those problems, identify them so they can fix them.
So the good news is it's ongoing, but they don't have a completion date yet.
We don't. In the code that was written for to send emails automatic deletion, we was careful with that because we didn't want to send something that was actually an email that needed to work. So it's very thin because we don't want to be in a position where we not answer the email because it's sent automatically to spam.
And they're actually right now working through some higher priority challenges with the email system. So they still need to get those issues resolved too. So it's all a work in progress.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
More questions?
Call center?
Yeah. We're going to go to the call center. I didn't want questions about that. Okay. So in the call center, some of you guys joined us this morning in a tour. I hope you enjoyed the tour. Timothy Williamson, one of the supervisors, was explaining how callback assists and the reorganization reconfiguration, of the call center and the space that we have there. So I'll go right into our average speed of answer. We reduced our speed of answer from June 22 to June 23 by 78%, from a 15-minute and 42-second to a 3-minute and 36 seconds. This is a major accomplishment for us as we continue to work on getting fully staffed. We recently added 4 new counselors, 8 counselors since the last board meeting total, but 4 in the last 3 to 4 weeks. Completing training, joining the team. Having additional staff and a reduction in call volume because of the work that Rick's group is doing has reduced our call volume in regards to turnaround times. Instead of getting things out to them a whole lot quicker. And managing our workforce based on availability and skill sets. And what I mean by that is the supervisor is looking very closely at the workforce management during the day. If they have people that's going to be out because we are a small group, they'll just breaks and lunches to make sure that we can have enough staff for the peak call volumes that we come in. And we've seen that help us out tremendously. And has helped position people to be ready to assist calls when they come in. So that has helped us be able to answer more calls as quickly as possible. So I'm very proud of that from where we were last year. Last year at this time probably was about 12 vacancies. And now to just have 4, that is a good accomplishment for us due to where we are in the hiring market.
Sometimes you do so much over the year. I mean, you forget all the work you've done to recruit people, to retain people, the remodeling of the call center, the atmosphere, the adding of supervisors, the adding of team leads. They've just technology. It's a different atmosphere over there. It's different for those. I know you didn't see maybe how it was before, but how it is now and how it's set up. We letting the sun in the windows instead of blocking them with cubicles. So all of the little things that they've done has come to, because if you saw, I don't know if you remember last year's chart, there was people waiting 40 minutes on average to get through. So we've come a long way down to 3 minutes. And that's why I don't want it just to say it's because we got more people or because we did this thing. It's a whole lot of stuff. And it is the two, Rick and Tanya, working together with operations, making improvements that does cut down turnaround times. They all go together, and him thinking about when do we do these transactions. So when can Tanya's team handle the calls? Not the calls are going to come in on payday and because there's already 2,000 people calling in. I can't have another 1,000 people call on top of it. So them working together has really, that's why it's night and day. If you pull up last year's materials, I, suggest you do if you want to see it. Take a look at last year's data and this year's, and it's huge improvement. They've done a great job.
I also want to thank you for doing that. That was really nice. It was nice to just see the space and the improvements there. I think it says a lot for in state government. Sometimes we have people that aren't working in the greatest conditions. I know I personally have gone into some private sector things for when I'm like, oh, well, no wonder they want to work here. So it was nice to see the improvements. I'm sure that's great for staff.
It was. I just want to thank the team too, because being an HR professional too, with the school districts, being able to see the hard work, what it looks like in there. Just I understand that it was the calls were just coming in, but to see the ones that popped up on the screen getting cleared in 13 to 16 seconds. When we have individuals in my specific district that are retiring, just being able to have that conversation with them of seeing the magic behind the wall. So thank you for that tour this morning.
And Ted Brand, Chief of Staff, is not here. Stanley Edwards, our facilities person. I mean, there's a lot of people have been involved in this. It just didn't jump up on the table by itself.
I have one more slide and give you back your time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about abandonment of calls. So as I stated before, in September of 2022, we went live with the new NICE platform and we redesigned our integrated voice system. And we added the callback features, callback assist, and we newly added the chat. Since January, we had over 274,000 calls go through our integrated voice system, and 35% of our members were able to receive assistance without having to speak to a counselor. So that is major because at one point before us redesigning that, we had very little people using our integrated voice system because it was so convoluted. We thought we was giving them a lot of options, but we was making it so long that they opt not to use it at all. So just to have that change and have them be able to receive status updates from Rick's team and all those things, it gives people a little bit of their time back. So we're respecting people's time, trying to service more by adding and updating our technology. We had over 146,000 calls come over to the counselors, and we were able to assist them through direct contact or having a member have the option to use the callback assist. And since January, we've assisted over 21,000 members through the callback assist. The callback assist, we did have that prior to this integration with NICE, but it was only offered a few times throughout the call, and it was offered way down in the call. Now it's offered kind of immediately. Looking at my stats, people are, if they decide not to hold, they're doing it after 2 minutes. So that's their choice to depart from the call. But 2 minutes when you have the option to call back assist, so either they found the answer or maybe they did get the answer, because that's not a long time compared to where we were. So I'm very proud of that. And for those that took the tour this morning, you guys had the option to see how the callback assists, and it shows you so how many came through, how many that we actually responded to. So that was a good thing to view for those that were able to see it. And that also just gives the members their time back without having to wait, because they don't lose their place in the queue. This has helped reduce the number hanging up before reaching a cancel by 85% from January of 2023. It went from 25.5% to 3.7%. So that is very, very good. We're very proud of that. Just a couple of highlights for me. On April 3rd, as I stated, we launched a new NICE system, which allows counselors to receive emails through the system in a queue. We added chat. And so we have a lot of activity going through chat right now. We've actually responded to 722 chats since it went live. We do have people staffed and to man that queue, and people are utilizing it. We have a good survey rate. I didn't bring it with me. That's on my part, but people are really enjoying it. We're getting some good reviews on it, so we will look forward to see how that goes in the future. And it also shows that people are using Orbit self-service, because they have to go to that to actually launch that option. So we are currently working on allowing the members the capability to be able to schedule appointments through self-service, which will reduce the need to call the call center. So we're hoping that'll be able to go live by the end of August and September. So that's another thing that we're doing to move us towards the future and give members the option to use time, do things on their own time without having to speak to us. And that kind of concludes my presentation.
Tanya, thank you for that presentation. And I would say on behalf of several people in this room and are not in this room that when she took this position, I think there are people here who saw her talents and believed in her possibly more than she did herself. And I've been in this situation all my life, so I know I was empathizing with you, but I appreciate you stepping up to the plate, and I know how confident you are in what you don't know about any topic, and I think that's a sign of a great leader. So thank you for stepping up, and I hope you're not as anxious as you were when we asked you.
I'm a little bit, but I'm getting better at it. Thank you for believing in me and trusting me. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Mr. Actuarial Joy.
Good morning.
We don't have time to go through that whole book today.
Yes. When we get this far, it'll
we assigned for Sam to come up and give. Good morning, everyone. This is Patrick Kinlaw. I am the Director of Policy Planning and Compliance for the retirement system. Our team works to ensure the health and long-term sustainability of the retirement systems. And this morning, there's 4 things I'd like to go over with you briefly. One is the next page of the presentation, which has to do with contribution-based benefit cap liabilities. We'll go over this in a moment. Also want to just describe where we are with employer contribution rates now that we're in a new fiscal year. I'd like to give you information about some employers who have left or are leaving the retirement systems. And finally, would like to go into describing a few specific pieces of legislation that have become law affecting the retirement systems before Sam Watts is here to provide a general update on the legislative session. So on this page, the contribution-based benefit cap liabilities, this is something that our team in policy planning and compliance administers. This is commonly known as the anti-pension spiking law. It took effect at the beginning of 2015. And you can see from this page that since 2015, which is now 8.5 years of activity, in total, the retirement systems have issued invoices to 685 separate employers. Separate retirements issued to the employers of those retirees. During that time, the retirement systems have invoiced more than $74 million and have collected more than $62 million so far of that. Moving on to the employer contribution rates, there's not a page for this, but I'd just like to describe it for you. On the local government side, the Board of Trustees set those rates back in January, so we have implemented them. So beginning July of this year, local government employers are contributing toward the basic retirement rate 12.85% of employee compensation for general employees and 14.1% of compensation for law enforcement officers. That does not include the 6% of compensation that employees themselves contribute. And the individual rates for each employer in the local government system vary by employer depending on different things that they've elected over the years, whether or not they employ law enforcement officers. And those were made available to the employers back in March. They're on our website in a long list that's searchable by employer. On the state system side, we are now operating under the continuing resolution provisions of the State Budget Act because there's no state budget for the fiscal year that we are now in yet. So prior to July, employers were contributing a total of 24.5% of pay, which covered retirement, retiree medical, disability, and death benefits. Beginning in July, the Office of State Budget and Management determined that the non-recurring funds portion of that rate should be removed. So beginning in July, employers are temporarily contributing 22.94%, which is a little less than they were back in June. When there is a law enacted providing for the employer contribution rate for the fiscal year that we're in right now, we will take whatever actions are necessary to adjust state employer rates prospectively and or retroactively, depending on what the law requires. So that's that item. I did want to give you an update on some employers who have left the retirement system. This has to do with an item in your appendix for today's meeting called Activity Regarding Inactive Employers since April. You might recall at the April meeting, our staff provided a statutorily required report on employing units who had gone some time without reporting any qualifying employees. And there were 12 of those employee units. They were all in the local government system. So in April, those employers were temporarily designated as inactive employers in the local government system. They were told that they had from then until June 30th to either resume reporting employees or to request another year of inactive status. One of them resumed reporting active employees, and that's the town of Morven, which is in Hanson County. The other 11 did not request another year of inactive status, so pursuant to the statute, they will exit the retirement system as employee units on October 1st of this year. These are all employers, you can see the list on the screen, but they are all employers who have last reported employees to us between 4 years ago and 30 years ago. So it's been a long time in all their cases, and they will not owe a withdrawal liability. This group of employers will not owe a withdrawal liability because of the way withdrawal liability is defined in statute. But we would expect in future years, as this process occurs, employers in this situation will owe a withdrawal. These employers will exit the system, and what will happen is that if any of them ever decide they would like to rejoin the local government system, they'll have to go through the full process of having the board of trustees review and approve their application to rejoin.
So why isn't there a withdrawal liability?
The withdrawal liability by statute is defined based on the employees. Like a withdrawal liability right now would be defined based on employees who are active as of December 31st, 2021. And none of these employers had any because their last employees who qualified for LGERS were between the 1990s and 2019, I believe.
So how's that G-Haul with a charter school that's withdrawing from the system and we charge them a withdrawal liability?
So charter school, which is, I did want to mention one of those as well in a moment, but a charter school, in that case, well, I'll go ahead and mention, there's a charter school that the State Board of Education did not renew their charter. They were participating in the state system. That's Invest Collegiate Transform Charter School, or IC Transform in Charlotte. They are withdrawing from TSERS effective July 1st, 2023. They did have employees in TSERS December 2021, so therefore there is a withdrawal liability.
Okay, thank you.
Finally, I'd like to describe a few pieces of legislation that have become law since our previous board meeting, and just briefly describe for you what those laws are, so you can look them up by number and also a few of the key provisions. So the first one signed into law was Senate Bill 729, which is Session Law 2023-48. It is called the CBBC Working Group Changes. So CBBC, as a reminder, is the contribution-based benefit cap. That's the anti-pension spiking law. A couple of years ago, the General Assembly created a working group between our department and the North Carolina School Boards Association to see if, as a group, we could recommend some changes that we could all agree on to the legislature on CBBC public policy related to some of the unique issues for public school systems. Our group met many times, and we're grateful to the School Boards Association and their representatives for the deep and thoughtful discussion that we had on a lot of issues. Senate Bill 729 does a few things, but in short, what it does is it sets up a process where a public school unit or a school system can become exempt from paying all or half of a pension spiking liability if the public school system certifies to us that the retirement meets certain conditions. And those conditions have to do with how long the employee worked in a position where their state-funded salary was mandated by the legislature, and the employer really had no discretion over that. And also it has to do with how much local supplement the school system was paying the person. So in certain conditions, the school system can have a half or full exemption from that amount. And it also, this bill sets up a framework that could be applied to some invoices that are unpaid from the past. And the third thing it does is authorizes the Department of State Treasurer to designate counsel, including private counsel, to represent the interests of the administration of the retirement systems and the disability income plan. House Bill 203 is the second bill that was signed into law July 10th. That's Session Law 2023-89. That is the DST Technical Corrections Bill, and it is what it sounds like. It contains clarifying changes, spelling corrections, and things of that nature. The third one is House Bill 201, which became law 2 days ago on July 25th, Session Law 2023-105. That's the Retirement Administrative Changes Act. We've already talked about one of the provisions of that law, which is the one having to do with payment recovery. I won't go into further depth on that one unless there's questions. But a couple other things that might be of interest in that law to the board. One thing that this law does is it allows our staff to review and approve applications for short-term disability or extended short-term disability benefits, as long as the Board of Trustees makes an administrative rule that specifies what the staff's review authority is. And what we envision is that authority will be used to approve an application or to refer it to the medical board, but it would not be used to deny the application for benefits without referring it to the medical board. Another thing that I'll just mention one other thing that this law does, which is probably the most significant change to a past practice, which is that it will allow the first retirement payment to be direct deposited if that is what the individual desires. That's what they put in their instructions earlier. In the past, the first retirement check was always sent by paper mail, no matter what. And it was the action of cashing that check that finalized a person's retirement. And it meant that once they cashed that check, they could no longer change their payment option. They could no longer change their beneficiary designation, except in very limited situations. Now, with the possibility of direct deposit, the date when someone's retirement becomes final is going to change. It is going to be the first regular payday after their effective retirement date, which is usually the 25th of the month after they retire on the 1st of the month. Or it will be the first day a payment is recorded as being issued to them if that's later. So they have up until that time to change their option to cancel their retirement if they want, to name a new beneficiary. And that will treat everyone the same while also enabling direct deposit if that's what the retiree wishes to happen. So several of these provisions in the administration law will require rulemaking, and we'll be addressing that process at future board. We're continuing to pay close attention to legislative actions, including, of course, the budget process. And as the legislative session reaches a conclusion, we will prepare our annual written summary of all the retirement-related provisions that have become law, which will be shared on our public website and provided to the boards. And that concludes my remarks.
Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you for the information. One, a lot of times I look at what just makes sense. And quite honestly, some of what you just discussed today, to me, Old Country Board from Tate County makes sense. The fact of the automatic payment, the direct payment, I think is a wonderful idea because we've looked and we've talked as a board since I've been up here about those payments and people holding them, not cashing them, showing back up, and then it causes the local government, the state, hardship. So I think that's a good move personally. I'm honestly great to hear or grateful to hear the conversation about the calculation of the 30-year when we start looking at that cap factor. Someone who is in that retirement situation but has been working in public education, that's been a concern to me that we have individuals who start in the ranks as an educator, in the classroom as a teacher, some as a bus driver, some as a TA, and eventually end up in a position where they finally are in that higher bracket, as you stated, with legislation in our pay scale. So I really welcome those conversations and that work around that being a conversation between the state school board, the local entities. So I appreciate that work behind that.
Thank you. And I'll just echo what Mr. Holly said. It doesn't happen frequently, but we have people who have retirement party after retirement party after retirement party. We post a position, we fill the position, the person leaves the buildings, and then they have seller's remorse, and 2 weeks later they show up and say, I want my job back, because they haven't cashed the check. And it puts everybody in a vortex, right? And so I appreciate you clarifying that. And on the pension spiking stuff, this is something that I supported as a legislator. I supported the previous treasurer when this legislation was enacted under her leadership. And just when you see this number up there, $74 million of billing, that's in a $115 billion plan. It doesn't sound like that amount, that large of an amount. But that was $74 million of costs that were being subsidized by everyone else in the system based on a county commission's decision to pay someone, a school board's decision to pay someone, or a city council's decision to pay someone, generally speaking. We don't control those boards or what they choose to pay people. Our job is to protect the system and to keep those costs from being subsidized by all the other 950,000 people are in the system. So I appreciate this working group also. Yes, ma'am.
I could just make one statement to the part about the retirement party after retirement party, and then they want to come back. I don't know what's done in the local governments with teachers, but in state government, the HR way of dealing with that is when somebody submits their retirement letter, their resignation, that the employer then sends back an acknowledgement and acceptance of it. And then that should take care of that. So I don't know if that's
a great idea.
FYI.
Great idea. Yes.
On the pension spiking for the 74 million, for the 12 million that's uncollected, litigation and everything else, will this administrative rule, i.e. those people who haven't paid it back saying it's really not our fault, will this solve some of that $12 million backlog?
So one of the things that Senate Bill 729 did is it allows the framework that it sets up for future invoices to be applied to certain unpaid invoices from the past. And we've already contacted school boards affected by that, and our hope is that applying this framework will help resolve whatever reasons there may have been behind not paying it. And then there are some matters of litigation that we can't really discuss today, but we're trying to work through getting as much of that resolved as we can.
Very much. All right. Thank you all. We're now on to Sam Watts, and then we'll get the update, and then we'll roll very quickly through our other final reports. Sam? And we have coffee in the back. If any member of the audience needs some coffee, it's in that back room back there.
I'll try not to be the one that makes you leave the coffee. It's very rare that I get to do this. Right, something Patrick said. We do have a state budget. We do have a state budget. It's a continuing resolution from the previous budget. We just don't have amendments or changes to it. And that is a particular key point in talking with the legislature, because they want to make sure everyone understands that we are operating under the Executive Budget Act with a continuing resolution and special rules. So we're careful to express that. The budget is the largest outstanding piece of work legislatively that we have remaining for the year with the General Assembly. We have every reason to believe that they will fully fund the retirement system again. We don't ever want to lose sight of the fact that that's the most important thing that we ask for from this board, from the retirement division, is to fully fund it so that future retirees will have money, there's money set aside for future retirees. We also believe there likely will be some sort of consideration of a COLA or a pension bonus for retirees. I can't tell you which kind it would be, or whether it's a COLA or a bonus, or how much it would be either way. There will be one of those, particularly since the House put one in and the Senate put one in. I understand there will be some in the final product. And I'm also assured that it will be fully correctly funded by the core contribution rates that say take it out of somewhere else. that's a danger point. So I think those are things that we can celebrate, although we can't really light the candle on the cake yet because the new budget budget bill isn't finalized yet. Patrick described the 3 retirement bills very aptly, and so we did those 3 agency bills. There were a few other retirement provisions scattered in a couple of other pieces of legislation that Patrick and the team were working through as well. There were also 2 other pieces of legislation from the agency. One unclaimed property bill that will allow folks to claim unclaimed property that is in the state and have the estate fees waived so that they won't have to pay $100 of an estate fee to claim a $50 check. Pat Hurley was championing up and managed to get part of the, we haven't fixed all the problems with that yet, but we managed to get that one done.
If an estate wasn't required to be open to start with, right?
If the estate wasn't required to be open to start with, the clerk can waive the fees. If the estate was open, the law was already in place for the clerk to do a clerk's opening or which was only $1. But that's, we're going to educate the clerks more on that availability, that being available to them. We also were successful in getting another piece of budget policy legislation enacted, the 173. Signature on that. You may recall last legislative session, we were concerned about a staff-driven general government that would restrict the ability of all the programs within the agency to would attempt to bring receipt-funded programs that were trust funds and should not be under the General Appropriations Act, under that Appropriations Act. So we successfully changed the statute that created that scenario. And we're grateful, again, continue to be grateful for the work and support of unanimous support by resolution from every board at the Department of State Treasurer helped us get that done with the resolutions that she passed 2 years ago. It just took a while to get it done. So we continue, we're very thankful for that. And I did want to add a couple of points on some of the retirement pieces just from a policy perspective. The treasurer referenced decisions by school boards, city councils, county commissions on making decisions on pension spike. We were able to get to common ground with the School Board Association because what really the heart of that compromise legislation is a recognition that the pension spiking law was netting retirees that where the school system had followed the state pay scale. The state had mandated the pay scale, and when the state mandates the pay scale, the school system doesn't really have any control over making those decisions. And so the state should be the one to fund that portion of that. If the General Assembly made the decision to set the scale, then the General Assembly is making the decision to pay for the impact of that scale.
Set the scale that puts someone in a spike.
Yes, sir. Okay, absolutely. And that was the heart of that, and that was some common ground we were able to latch onto, and we do hope that will resolve a fair number of the dispute, a fair amount of the dispute with the school systems, and then some of the other tweaks along the way we've made for the last 4 or 5 years should also reduce the friction on that. So by next year, things that are unresolved will simply get added to the employer contribution rate for the retirement system and be paid off over the amortization period of the scheme, or over the amortization schedule of the system. So you don't ever want to put a bow on it and say everything's done until it's done, but it's definitely moving in a good direction. It's just like laws. And I sorry I was not here for the longer discussion on House Bill 201 that you guys had earlier, but I did want to say it was from a policy perspective, a delicate balance involving the House and the Senate looking at the law, and because they didn't want to create a situation where one person at our agency could make a mistake and then could recover the money on behalf of the taxpayers. So they didn't want to take away a mechanism that lets us recover what's owed. You're really putting us in a difficult spot. One person could make hopefully an innocent mistake and pay someone hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we wouldn't be able to do that. That is from a policy standpoint, that is an issue that's on the forefront of a lot of minds this year and the last couple of years. Even if you look at the press clips from the last week, you'll see that the Attorney General's office is wrestling with the same statute that was trapping us in the 100% collections, and that they were trying to push to get $102,000 in immediate payment from a family that was told they only owed $6,700 to a state mental hospital. So then there was a mistake, obviously. And then they got a letter saying that they were going to be sued for $102,000 by the state. So it's that same collection statute that is, that there's every agency wrestles with a balance between being humane and thoughtful in how you collect, but that responsibility to collect the money that the taxpayers have paid. So it's not a new thing. We also see it a lot with hospitals. Surprise billing, I deal with it a lot. My other hat with the state health plan now. Some more input on that coming very soon for some research that we participated in. With that, I'm happy to take any questions about the legislative session or where we stand or what we did or.
Any questions? Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate all you're doing. We'll now go to Lynch Brewer to give us a brief update on the IEC meetings.
Treasurer, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Appreciate the opportunity to be with everybody this morning. The Investment Advisor Committee last met on May 31st to review and discuss the performance of underlying investments within the retirement system. At the end of the first quarter 2023, investments within the retirement system were valued at $113.2 billion, compared to $111 billion at the end of Q1 of 2022. The current valuation of the retirement system through today essentially is approximately $116 billion. The calendar year to date return is approximately 6.9%. The July return was 1.1%. And the prior fiscal year return is from July 2022 to June of 2023 is approximately 5.3%. In regards to the allocation of our book, the growth segment of the book was valued at $55 billion, or roughly 49% of the portfolio, which was underweighted to a target of 55%. Rates and liquidity remains overweighted within the portfolio at $43.6 billion. That puts us at a 38.5% ratio versus a target of 33%. Inflation-sensitive investments was properly weighted at roughly $12 billion to a target percentage of 11%, and multi-strategy remains overweighted at $2.23 billion, which puts us at 2% versus a target of 1% of the total book. For first quarter 2023, the total pension return came in at 3.76% versus the implementation benchmark of 3.91%. The one-year returns came in at a negative 3.69% versus a benchmark of negative 5.13%. So definitely a promising outcome there. Three-year returns came in at 6.67% versus a benchmark of roughly 8%. And 5 and 10-year returns outpace those of our benchmarks at 5.1% and 6% respectively. The past 12 months showed the returns of the retirement system came in at 44%. Our return outperformed 44% of our peers, with 1% of the highest, with corresponding risk of 63% of our peers, where 1% was the highest. Our investment teams continue to outperform our peers with a similar risk tolerance. And looking across various asset classes, those with bright spots over the past 12 months were our cash positions with a positive return of roughly 2%, and inflation-sensitive investments, which provided a great hedge for us with a 12-month return of 8.86%. In our meeting, we also had the opportunity to be brought up to speed on our real estate allocation. Troy March, our Director of Real Estate, provided the committee with an update. He went over the existing composition of our real estate portfolio, which is currently 22% office space, 33.6% residential, 22.7% industrial, 10.5% retail, 3% hotel lodging, and 8.3% other. The non-core real estate valuation for first quarter ended at $2.3 billion, with a 12-month loss for that particular category of 4.93%, while our core real estate values at the end of the first quarter came in at $6.6 billion, with a 12-month return of negative 1.63%. And Troy reiterated that our policy target of our real estate investments is capped at 8%. So we're just under that at 7.8% roughly. So the economy continues to be a very interesting time for all of us. Yesterday, the Fed raised rates by 0.25% to 5.5%, its highest level in 22 years. Numbers came out this morning for that the economy grew 2.4% in the second quarter versus analyst expectations of 1.5%. So despite the Fed's tightening rising rates, the economy is still surprising all of us. And Treasurer, that essentially that wraps up my report. I'll be glad to open up the floor to any questions from any fellow board members, should they have any.
Thank you, Lance. That was very comprehensive. Any questions?
I'll just say that I'm excited that we're soon going to have that in writing, because that was a lot to comprehend all those numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lance, no questions. Thank you for joining us. We're now next to well, let me say just two quick things about IAC. The real estate division, we've done a decent job of dealing with what has happened to the complete collapse of commercial and retail real estate over the last few years. I say this because just like after the great financial crisis, where people just turned in the keys to the house because they were upside down, the same thing is happening in commercial real estate, especially office buildings. So, and secondly, on the private equity side, which we're the biggest private equity investor in North Carolina with billions of dollars, a lot of those calculations are, in my opinion, are a little bit lagging. What it's worth is what it's worth, and it's what the limited partners, the general partners say it's worth. But a lot of times in the private equity side, because it's not in the newspaper every day about what it sells for, it takes a little while to catch up. So, and lastly, as far as when you heard we were overweight, we just a few years ago, were getting a half of 1% on a lot of the tens of billions of dollars that's sitting upstairs. And in some instances, we're earning over 6% on some of that money. So I gave that generally is a risk-free investment, a risk-free return, and we're earning interest rates. High interest rates are horrific for the economy in every way, shape, or form. It does provide some tailwind as far as any large pension plans like ours, who are able to put this money into things that simply bear interest. So, thank you. We'll next have a update on the rescue squad from Tom Causey.
All right, this is item number 8. Materials is a report from the advisory panel from the advisory panel of the Firefighters and Rescue Squad Workers Pension Fund on the status and needs of the fund. The advisory panel is tasked with meeting at least once per year to provide an annual report to the LGERS board. The panel itself doesn't have any administrative authority, but does provide recommendations in the report around funding, investments, benefits, and administrative policy. The retirement system staff support the panel by presenting updates on legislation, operations, communications, actuarial evaluations, as well as we walked the advisory panel through last year's report to review what the advisory panel identified previously on the needs and recommendations of the fund. RSD staff, then we capture all that information, we create the report. This is what you have in your materials today. We met on June 21st, 2023 to provide the various updates I just mentioned. And the advisory panel requested in the report, we call attention to on page 7 of the report, item number 3. Currently, members that reach 20 years of service receive $170 per month beginning at age 55. When they retire, they receive no additional benefit if they perform additional service. Panel's recommendation is they'd like to see a change to that to allow for additional benefits for more service, similar to what we have with the National Guard. The National Guard retirees receive $105 per month if they hit 20 years of service. However, $10.50 more per month for each additional year of service, up to $210. So there is more money if you get up to 30 years of service. And so that's what the panel would like to see. That would be a legislative change. Most of the other recommendations that follow that on the next pages are around communications with departments and members of the fund. However, those become challenging, and during our discussions, on page 9, we added a recommendation on number 10, which is a request for the Retirement Systems Division to advocate for more structured data and contribution reporting, similar to the other retirement systems. The retirement systems are all required to report monthly. It comes in, it's electronic payments, electronic reporting. It's due by the 5th business day. The pension fund doesn't have any of those types of requirements. Instead, for example, it's currently optional for the member to make contributions, or the employer can make contributions. It could be employer money, or what I'm calling employer, which is really the department's. It could be the department's money. It could be the member's money. We don't really know. The payments can also be made in any interval throughout the year. It can be made monthly, it can be made quarterly, it can be made yearly. It can also be made by the next calendar year by March 31st. And so all of that contributes to the administrative burden that we have with the fund. It's a very small team. We also receive payments by check, and the checks can come in as $10 checks for each individual of the fund, or it could come in as a lump sum payment. Just all of that just creates some burden. So they would like to see more structure. And I think, again, that would also probably be legislative changes to the fund. So those are 2 items they wanted to point out. I don't know if Kevin Gordon is still on, if he had any comments on, he's part of the panel, if he had any comments that he wanted to add. I don't hear Kevin. I don't know if he's on still or not with us, but those are the two recommendations. And so that's all I have to say. There's questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. With that, I'll entertain a motion from the TSERS, from the LGERS board to accept staff's recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Second being made. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Dale Falwell,
Aye.
Teresa Everett.
Aye.
Thank you. Kevin Gordon. Don't hear Kevin. Lance Brewer.
Aye.
Melody Brady.
Aye.
Thank you. Pat Hurley.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you. Is that it?
Yes.
We'll now go to Tim Melton for a presentation of surety rules and impact analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Timothy Melton. I'm the Assistant General Counsel for the Retirement Systems Division. And agenda item 9 involves the ongoing rulemaking process regarding the proposed administrative rules for LGERS surety as it pertains to an employer's withdrawal liability. So you may recall that the proposed rule text was initially presented to this board earlier this year at the January meeting. And now that additional steps have been completed, the LGERS board can approve and adopt the final rule text. The materials for this agenda item include a summary memo of the relevant legislation and the completed rulemaking steps, but I'll go ahead and provide a brief overview. So Session Law 2022-70 amended General Statute 128-23 to provide that any eligible employer that is not a taxing authority and is not a participating employer in LGERS as of September 1st, 2023, is not eligible to commence participation in LGERS without obtaining surety as defined by rules adopted by the board. The legislation further directed the board to adopt the necessary rules by August 1st, 2023. And I'm happy to report that the board is on track to do so today. So DST staff prepared the proposed rule text and the regulatory and fiscal impact analysis, which provides more detail about the proposal, including alternatives, benefits, and impacts. The proposed rule text and that impact analysis can be found in the board materials as well. Just want to point out the proposed rule citations are 20 NCAC 02C.0210 and 0211. And as you can see in that proposed rule text, we did define surety as a written agreement given for the fulfillment and guarantee of withdrawal payment to cease participation in LGERS. Happy to go into more detail about that. I did make that presentation and go into a little bit more detail during the January meeting, but I'm happy to go ahead and do so again. But let me just walk you through the steps. So on January 11, 2023, the Carolina Office of State Budget and Management approved the regulatory and fiscal impact analysis for publication. And during the regular quarterly board meeting on January 26, 2023, this board unanimously voted to approve the proposed rule text and impact analysis. They were subsequently published in the North Carolina Register on March 1st, 2023. The 15-day public hearing request period expired on March 16th, 2023, without any requests having been received. And the 60-day public comment period closed on May 1st, 2023, without any comments having been received as well. So the next step of the permanent rulemaking process calls for the LGERS board to approve and officially adopt the final rule text and impact analysis. And to be clear, this is the same text and analysis that was presented in January. So if approved and adopted today, DST staff will submit the final rule text to the Rules Review Commission. And we checked the calendar, and it looks like they'll be meeting again. It'll be in front of the Rules Review Commission on September 21st, 2023. So with that, staff recommends that the LGERS board approve and adopt the final rule text and impact analysis related to CAC 02C, 0210, and 211, and further authorize DST staff to take additional steps necessary to complete the rulemaking process. That concludes my remarks. I'm happy to take any questions if there are.
Do I hear a motion to take staff's recommendation regarding adoption of these final rules from the LGERS board?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Cleve. Motion second being made. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Dale Caldwell,
Aye.
Teresa Everett,
Aye.
Kevin Gordon, Lance Brewer,
Aye.
thank you, Melody Brady,
Aye.
Matt Hurley.
Motion passes. Now we're taking up time here. Just quickly, Tom's going to present this determination regarding the supplemental insurance rebates.
In your materials is a memo regarding supplemental voluntary insurance rebates. It talks about we're receiving a check from United Healthcare. We actually have received the check since I did this memo. But the statutes outline that the TSERS Board of Trustees may determine that rebates received by the Department of State Treasurer from supplemental voluntary insurance benefits are not needed to pay future administrative costs of these benefits. And if they make the determination, then the treasurer may direct the funds to be transferred into the unfunded liability solvency reserve. So, we do have, Pierce Insurance is the third party that we've hired, and they work with United Healthcare. And so we don't have any administrative costs at the retirement system. And then it outlines, the memo outlines, there's 3 conditions the treasurer, that outlines the treasurer regarding putting them funds into the unfunded liability solvency reserve. And then after it's put in the reserve, the board's information, the amount in the reserve is then divided between the retiree health benefit fund and TSERS proportionally to each program's unfunded liabilities, as outlined in the most recent, when that's done, outlined in the annual comprehensive financial report. And so staff recommends that TSERS board makes determination that the funds received as a result of the rebate are not needed to pay future administrative costs of the supplemental voluntary insurance benefits.
Thank you. I need a motion from the TSERS board to accept staff's recommendation.
Awesome.
Thank you. Motion by Representative Hurley, second.
I second.
Thank you, Dirk, excuse me. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Treasurer Falwell,
Aye.
Barbara Gibson, stepped out. Teresa Everett,
Aye.
thank you. Jeffrey Winstead,
Aye.
we got a ringing sound we're trying to resolve. I don't know if that's us or somebody out there. John Ebbinghausen, Joshua Smith,
Aye.
thank you. Lance Brewer,
Aye.
thank you. Oliver Holly,
Aye.
and we do have a
Good, thank you. Next is our Patrick Kinlaw with More Actuarial Joy for a present a report of sources collected, and we'll need a vote.
Good morning, everyone. This is Patrick Kinlaw again. The document referenced on item 11 of your agenda is a required report that our department must make each year to the boards, the Joint Legislative Commission on Government Operations, and the Fiscal Research Division by August 1st of each year. This has to do with Session Law 2017-129, which established 2 legislative enactment implementation arrangements, one for the state system, one for the local system. If a law is enacted that reduces the cost of retirement benefits according to an actuarial note, then the boards may choose to direct up to 1/100th of 1% of compensation out of employer contribution rates in order to fund the administrative implementation of that law. The boards cannot direct any contributions in arrangements after November 1st, 2026. The 2017 law requires the department to report each year by August 1st on the amounts and sources of funds collected each year and the nature of expenditures. As of June 30th, 2023, the department has not identified any legislation that has resulted in implementation projects eligible for these types of expenditures. Therefore, the amounts collected through June 30th, 2023 have been $0, and the amounts expended have been $0. And upon acceptance of this report by the boards, staff will communicate the report to the Joint Legislative Commission on Government Operations and the Fiscal Research Division.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion from the TSERS board to accept the report?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
I'll make the second.
Second. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Dale Folwell,
Aye.
Barbara Gibson,
Aye.
Teresa Everett,
Aye.
thank you, Dirk German,
Aye.
Jeffrey Winstead. Jeffrey Winstead? I don't hear Jeffrey. John Ebbinghausen?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Winstead. Joshua Smith?
Aye.
Lance Brewer?
Aye.
Right.
And thank you. And a like motion from the Eldridge board?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Motion second being made. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Treasurer Folwell.
Aye.
Teresa Everett.
Aye.
Homer Dearman.
Aye.
Lance Brewer.
Aye.
Melody Brady.
Aye.
Yep.
All right. Now to our public comment section. Has anyone signed up for public comment? Hearing none, I'll hereby deem the public comment section closed. Just hang with us a little bit. I just need to make sure I'm looking and reading and understanding this properly. I know. For doing so, I just want to recognize some folks in the audience. David's here from legislative staff. Suzanne, you want to introduce your folks from scenic?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. This is Janet Budd. She's a member of our board as well as a member of the retiree council. Thank you for having us.
And the one who always looks down on me?
And Chris Haley. He's on the lobbying team with Scenic. Boston Actuarial Joy, pardon me.
Okay. They're all tall, I guess. Yeah.
Sure. I'm Tim O'Connell. I'm with the North Carolina Retired Governmental Employees Association. We are working on shortening that name so I can say it a little bit quicker in these meetings, but it's great to be here. And I appreciate the work y'all are doing. Thank you.
Jordan Katzler, Legislative Counsel with the League of Municipalities. Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you all. Appreciate you joining us. I think, and anytime that you'd like to have a tour of the call center, maybe at the next meeting, we'll be glad to arrange that for you also. Now, I will be entertaining a motion to adjourn the local board.
Board of Trustee comments, if there are any.
Oh, do we have any Board of Trustee comments?
I get one every meeting. Just want to say thank you again to all the educators, those that are already back with year-round schools. But as you know, we are geared to go back in the next couple of weeks. So on behalf of all of the school employees, certified, classified, let's pay attention as those big yellow school buses are back on the road, as our students will be traveling to and from in the next couple of weeks. So once again, just congratulations and looking forward to another wonderful school year.
Thank you. Anything else from Elders board members? And let me ask a question before I ask for a motion. Once we adjourn the local board, they're free to go.
Free to go. And we'll continue with the state board.
All right. Homer, I'd like to give you an opportunity to make a motion to adjourn our meeting in the name of former and say a few words if you like.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. It's an honor to be able to do that. And in memory of the Honorable Jack Warren, former mayor of the city of King for over 24 years, had the opportunity to work with Mayor Warren over a little over 8 years as city manager, and have been friends with Mayor Warren for longer than that. He's been a strong influence on me personally and in my career since having the opportunity to serve the city of King as a graduate intern as a student at Appalachian State University. Mayor Warren was a dedicated public servant involved in so many aspects of life in the city of King, and is truly missed. His family is grateful for the outpouring of support over the last several months in his illness, and certainly appreciate the opportunity that I've had to get to know him and to work with him and learn from him to this point in my career. And so it's an honor today to make the motion to adjourn the LGERS board in memory of the Honorable Jack E. Warren, former mayor of the city of King. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer.
Mayor, second.
Second.
Thank you. I had lots of activities that day. I was doing all of those on my motorcycle, and my last interaction with the mayor and with Homer is when there was the main artery between the county seat of Stokes County, which is Danbury, and the most populated part of Stokes County, which is King, was washed out. And that was causing lots of issues with emergency response, people just getting back and forth from one place to another between the county seat and the most populated area. And so they called me and said, we need to find some pipe because the DOT could not, during the shortage of supplies, they couldn't find 2 pieces of pipe to put on the road. And I was honored that as I was going to his funeral, which was also on Brown Road, the church is beyond where this road was washed out. I just thought about my last interaction with him, and he would not hesitate to call anyone, including the state treasurer, to say, hey, can you come up here and help us get this situation resolved? And Homer went with me on that tour that day also, and it reminded me that when you're dealing with a situation where the road's been out for months and months and months and months, don't ever show up in a white Ford Fusion with a government tag on it. 15. See, you were smart. You were in your pickup truck. 15 people stopped me and said, are you finally here to fix this road? That's not the kind of car you want to drive when people are so frustrated about not being able to get to their neighborhood. And so it was a great service. And Homer just reminded me, I got an opportunity to speak to the gentleman who was shot through his skull, the deputy sheriff, I guess. The deputy sheriff in Stokes County.
The sheriff, is it?
The deputy who was shot, or
Chase Sawyer.
Yes, and he actually was at that service and back at work doing desk duty. And young gentleman, probably 30 years old. Another guy looks down on me. I guess he's probably 6'3" or so, and you can see how much trauma that he has dealt with after being shot in the line of duty through the head. And so it was a sad occasion, but it's glad to be able to be there. And that on the backside of Stu Everson's senior's funeral the day before, who was a really important person in Christian radio around the world, not just in North Carolina, but around the world. It was a couple of days of remembering people who we were all standing on the shoulders of. So we have a motion and a second, and no further discussion. The clerk will call the roll to adjourn the Elders Board. And then we got some clarifying language about what we need to do with executive session as far as the TSERS Board is concerned. And I appreciate you hanging with us. We're going to try to get out here as quickly as possible because we do have to have enough votes to actually adjourn the meeting. So go ahead and call the roll.
Neil Falwell,
Aye.
Teresa Everett,
Aye.
Lance Brewer,
Aye.
Melody Brady,
Aye.
Pat Hurley.
Aye.
And the Elders Board is hereby adjourned. I know that, so the designee from the Superintendent of Public Instruction, she's still
Yes.
she's still on the hook, right?
She is.
Okay, just want to remind her of that. You're only half off the hook. Thank you. And to Lisa and all, Elizabeth, thank you for making this jump up on the table, but technologically and otherwise. If you don't mind, if you can jot in your notes that when the minutes do come out, that we can send Homer's, Jack's family and let them know of his remarks regarding this adjournment. That'd be lovely. So I appreciate all the Elders Board sticking with us. Okay, sir. Thank you very much. All right. Now, we're down to executive session and required staff in consultation with legal counsel on Hughes versus the Board of Trustees of the Teachers and State Employees Retirement System et al. Tally v. Hill Fall. We will need to continue this meeting. The state board need to continue closed session so that we can get counsel from our internal counsel as well as our guest, Mary Scruggs, Special Deputy Attorney General for the Department of Justice. So I guess I'm down to the point where I ask for a motion to go into closed session. Sure. Okay. And do I hear a motion to go into closed session, executive session, to consult with our legal advisor on the Hughes case and the Tally case in order to prevent the disclosure of confidential information pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318 and preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to the North Carolina General Statute 143-318. Do I hear that motion?
Mr. Chairman, John Eppinghausen, I make a motion that the TSERS Board move into closed session.
I'll second it.
Motion second being made. And then just a few instructions after that. Clerk, call the roll.
Dale Falwell,
Aye.
Barbara Gibson, Teresa Everett,
Aye.
Dirk German,
Aye.
Jeffrey Winstead. Jeffrey Winstead.
Aye.
Don't. Oh, thank you. Joshua Smith,
Aye.
Lance Brewer,
Aye.
and Pat Hurley.
Aye.
All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and before you leave, so at 25, we'll meet upstairs to go into closed session. And if I'm correct, when we come back into open session, all we're going to be doing.
And those who are attending virtually or on the phone yesterday provided the call-in information. I don't know if Teresa Everett has that information or not. Do you have that?
I do not.
Lisa, we'll send it to you right now. We'll email it to you. Have her email? No.
Was that on the invite, Lisa?
No. If you have my email address, if you could email me I'll send you the information.
Thank you.
Okay. How many are we expecting to join us remotely for teachers?
Well, we have 1, 2. There's 10 of us all together. 10 altogether.
Okay.
And then 4. Yeah.
All right. So everybody here is teaser, correct?
Four.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So we have a quorum.
Yep.
Okay, all right. All right. So we're good to go upstairs, take a break, and then acknowledge, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay.
We have enough yet.
You ready for your 1 o'clock meeting?
Yes.
I understand.
It'll be more intense.
Yeah, we're ready. We have folks on the
Okay.
phone.
I entertain a motion to adjourn for the teachers board.
I'll second.
Who had the motion?
I did. Bert made the motion.
Yeah.
Second by Ms. Gibson. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
All right. Treasurer Falwell,
Aye.
Teresa Everett,
Aye.
Jeffrey Winstead,
Aye.
thank you. John Ebbinghausen. John Ebbinghausen.
Here.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, yes.
Joshua Smith. Lentz Brewer.
Aye.
Oliver Holly.
Aye.
Pat Hurley.
Aye.
We're hereby adjourned. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.